Good afternoon, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome you today as we celebrate and make formal our relationship with Reverend Ian Riddell and recommit together to crafting a shared ministry of justice, kindness, and love. My name is Shirley Lemaster, and I've been a UU since 1990 when I joined the UU Church of the River in Memphis. I joined UU Church of the Desert in 2001 and have been a very active member since then. I've served on the board for 9 years, including as president. I've been on almost every committee that we have, and I have been on every ministerial search committee since I've been here, including the one that has called Reverend Ian to be our settled minister. How many of you were here for the dedication of this building in 2005? Okay, more than I had hoped. That's wonderful. I'm so happy to have you here. There were so many wonderful leaders who have envisioned and executed our aspirations to be in this building. I'll just mention a few of them because we'd be here till midnight. But Reverend Dr. Kenneth Torkel McLean was our minister at the time, and he envisioned our building and helped us come here. In addition to that, Marian Elson, who is sitting right back there, was our church administrator for years and years and kept everything humming along here, in addition to being chair of many different committees. Now I will list a few of our deceased board presidents whose vision brought us here. When I joined in 2001, Mary Lou Gathings was president, and her husband John wrote our history, 40 Years Wandering in the Desert, which I'm sure many of you have read. Then came our co-presidents, Bob and Carol Wolfson, and we wouldn't be here without them either, their generous donations and leadership. And as a footnote, I chaired the furnishings committee when we moved into the building. And Carol was on the committee, and she said, let's go to neighborhood church in Pasadena. And so we did. Those chairs you're sitting on are copies of the chairs that they had. Aren't they comfortable? They really are. So Reverend Ian, just in case you ever see someone dozing off, it's because the chairs are so comfortable. He's wiping his brow, by the way. Janine Shonside, who quilted our beautiful rainbow flag behind the pulpit. She was our next president, and then I was the president. And since then, we've had some who've moved away. None, to my knowledge, have been deceased. So, many of our presidents are here. If you've ever been president of our beloved community, please raise your hand. Higher. Yay. If you've served on our board, raise your hand. Yay. If you've served on a committee, raise your hand. Look at that. Wow. This is what shared ministry looks like. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. There are far too many other important people who were visionaries and who made this home possible. My time is almost up. I know the ministers are going, really? But I must mention Walt and Olivia Lab. Walt did our banners when we went from UU FOD, Fellowship of the Desert, to UUCOD, Church of the Desert, upon the vote of the congregation at the time, in 2001, actually. And Olivia was in the choir. When I joined in 2001, there were 4 women who were in the choir, and that was all the choir was, 4 women. And their son, Walter, did that beautiful mural behind us as a donation to our church. And he was collaborative. He had meetings to make sure he was going to do something very abstract. And that wasn't what the congregation wanted, so he changed it. We gather today on the unceded lands of the Awakaliente band of the Cahuilla people, and we commit to grow in our understanding and relationship with this land and the people who inhabited it and nurtured it before our arrival. We welcome you all, Reverend Ian's family and friends, Reverend Ian's colleagues in ministry, who will be in a moment, and friends and members of this congregation. We welcome you into the fabric of this place we call home, where we strive to create a beloved community of diversity, spiritual growth, and social justice. We welcome you in joy and humility. We welcome you in peace and love. Welcome to this glorious and historic service. We love you, Reverend Ian. Now, if you will please rise and body and spirit as we sing our opening hymn, Wake Now My Senses. Is that right? Okay, let's do it. Now we will light the chalice. If Joni will come forward and help, please. Please read the words that are on our screen. May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration.
Oh, how good it is to see you again. Attune yourself to the present moment, to the gift of the present moment. Breathing in, and breathing out. We are in desert times, and we are in the desert literally. But here in this place made holy by our hopes, dreams, sorrows, and joys, we are at the well of spiritual life, spiritual nourishment, the well of kindness and caring. Come into this oasis. Welcome to this sacred time as this church comes together in the presence of the gathered community of congregants and ministers to officially declare and proclaim Reverend Ian to be your minister, and he pledges to make you his top ministry priority. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, Spirit, come near. Blessed be, and amen.
Good afternoon. I'm Bryna Bloom, Chair of Worship here at UUCOD. Honored to have been asked to read these words from Rabbi Dr. Jules King, my rabbi of the Desert Outreach Synagogue that calls this house its spiritual home as well. Mazel tov. You had to know that was going to be in there someplace. Mazel tov to my dear friend, colleague, and holy brother on this amazing day of your installation as the settled minister. I am sorry that I'm not able to be with you in person, but I'm certainly there with you in spirit and in my heart. My friendship and our partnership with UUCOD started in 2016, and I am very grateful for the connections that we have created and will continue. It was truly beshert. It was meant to be. On behalf of myself and DOS, I want to take this opportunity to express how grateful we are for you, the beloved UUCOD family and community, in honoring you and celebrating you today. We wish you and your congregation many years and abundant blessings. Hazak, hazak, v'neit hazek. Be strong, and let us strengthen one another.
Good afternoon. Reverend Ian has asked me to share this poem with him, which is one of his favorites. The title is Kindness. Those of us that know him know it's really appropriate. It's by Naomi Shihab Nye from Under the Word Selected Poems. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. How he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth, then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.
I bring you greetings from the Universalist Unitarian Church of Santa Paula, which is in Ventura County. Unitarian Universalism has a grand vision for our world, one of peace and justice and the sharing of joy with love at the center. You are here at the UU Church of the Desert. You here have a vision of who we want to be on this day with the installation of Reverend Ian. We build our visions thinking of who came before us, our ancestors, those devoted lay people and clergy who created safe places for all of us for what is of greater meaning, centering love, bringing justice to those historically on the margins, and those who gave their gifts of time, their gifts of whatever talents they had, and their treasure to bring these visions to fruition. Many gifts and the time given by many people went into today, I am sure. And now is the time for us to get to the treasure part, the money, 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 money part. I could go into that song. Today, you and Reverend Ian have chosen to split the offering between the Living Tradition Fund and the Transgender Health and Wellness Center of Southern California. Just a little bit about the Living Tradition Fund for those of you who may not know about it. Back in 1988, the UUA established the fund and requested that at ordinations and at installations like these, that an offering to the fund be made, and it's become a tradition among us. Myself, having worked on the denominational level for many years and with colleagues on the staff who work with older and retired ministers, and having sat on the Ministerial Fellowship Committee and heard of the challenge of those preparing for our ministry and those new ministers just starting out with a burden of debt, and having been advisors to UU students at a seminary for 10 years, I know the importance of this fund, so please give generously. And your donation will be split with the Transgender Health and Wellness Center located right here in Palm Springs area, serving the needs of our local transgender community, intersex, gender nonconforming, gender fluid, and non-binary committee. They are the largest transgender organization in the Inland Empire. You can write a check with installation in the memo line, check out to the church, or you can give cold, hard cash. Remember that stuff? Please be generous as we celebrate this very...
How good it is to be together, especially because of this occasion, the installation of Reverend Ian. Both of you, Ian, and you as a congregation, you both in separate ways have really been through it over the last few years. You have. And yet here we are on a most sacred, joy-filled, heart-filled occasion. And I just have to say thank you. It is an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be here. And I am deeply moved to celebrate with you. In talking with Ian about this service, He said he wanted to focus on shared ministry, on crafting your ministry together. And I love this theme because it speaks the truth. Ministry is a joint effort. It's good to remember the word minister is a noun, but shared ministry is a verb, an action verb. And action is best when done collectively. Worship and crafting ministry together is a multiple people experience in multiple ways, with multiple roles, for multiple people. For you here right now, and for those who will come through those doors fresh and anew next Sunday, next month, and in the years to come. Crafting a ministry together is both an invitation to you and it is a lifestyle. Now, I'm sure over the time you've come to understand crafting is who Ian is. He is a knitter, and that says a lot about Ian and his understanding of ministry. I know from experience that Ian is at his best when he is doing ministry in partnership. And you, dear congregation, are his partner. Ian is also a gatherer of yarns and stitches, of people and their gifts, of beauty and meaning, especially through music and hymns. And this has important implications for the shared ministry that you are creating. I've titled this sermon, Lessons on the Craft of Shared Ministry. It's my attempt to share some of the lessons I've learned, but may not have practiced over the years. And it also highlights, I think, some skills needed for a thriving, joyful, life-affirming ministry. And some of you, like me, may crave a definition. Well, just what do we mean by shared ministry? He's the one who went to seminary, after all. Because each congregation and each ministerial team they are different. There cannot be one definition that's applicable to all. I think that figuring out that definition is part of the craft of ongoing conversation and engagement and refinement. I do know that during the pandemic and when we did church only on Zoom, it was easy to develop a kind of passivity about ministry, as if the congregation didn't have much of a role. You just got to show up with your coffee in your robe and you got to do church. Not a bad deal. But I think doing church online kind of helped develop a kind of passivity about ministry. But I'm here to tell you a truth. Passivity has no role in shared ministry. The various elements of this service are all important. They have a history and a tradition behind them, and one of the most embodied elements are the hymns. Breathing and singing together has a power all its own, and it literally aligns us from the many individuals that we are scattered here and online into one group, united to move forward. Our processional hymn, Wake Now My Senses, is a traditional one for these kinds of services, and many people think it's really all just about the minister, especially that last verse, Wake now my vision of ministry clear. But in the context of shared ministry, this hymn includes you. And this service is a sacred act that installs Ian as settled minister, and he's not the only one making a promise today. You are. So in the ministry that you are crafting together, what is your vow in this ministry? With love as your guide, what will you give to it? And what are you going to open your heart to receive from it? The other verses in that hymn apply, especially reaching out to the new and always questing for truth. Though Ian is your settled minister in this time and in this day, you cannot settle for previous ways of doing ministry. The world has changed and is changing rapidly. And we, as people, have changed. And if we're lucky, we get to keep changing. So your shared ministry has to be open to the new and open to evolving truth. In a shared ministry, actions are grounded in compassion as you partner with each other and other communities and organizations to address the oppression and hardship experienced. Use your privileged place for expanding your understanding of systems of oppression and work for the rights of those whose rights are being denied. And we've seen that happening a lot. So many people right now are scared for all kinds of reasons. And they're just looking for a place that they can come, be themselves, be seen, and be heard. They need a place where they will be valued. And while our world is changing, systems of oppression and fear, greed and bigotry are fighting hard to stay in place. We see this across our globe. We see it in this country and even in this state. This congregation's shared ministry is needed now more than ever. A shared ministry awakens not just Ian's sense of ministry, but also yours. And the mingling of your callings is crucial for transformation's sake, for the transformation of lives, of how you think, of the words you speak, and the actions that you take. Because when those are changed and transformed, habits and systems begin to transform. I appreciated your website, and I appreciated reading the words of your new board president. There is an energy and a vitality that comes across when you read. And I hope you do read his letters and words and reports. You are a sanctuary for diversity, spiritual growth, and social justice. This is your mission. It is the what. When you ask yourselves, what are we doing here anyway? And when you ask, why are we doing what we're doing, that is your vision. For a better planet, for equality and equity, for justice, for spiritual growth. Socrates once said, the beginning is the most important part of the work. Today, you are at a new beginning, crafting a ministry that is intentional, that will only evolve at the speed of trust. And when there are times that you're uncertain about what the congregation should focus on, or where your financial resources should go, or which organization should you partner with here in Rancho Mirage, remember your mission. It can help answer those questions and direct your ministry. The hymn that we're going to sing after I get done, it's titled, Just as Long as I Have Breath. It's one of Ian's favorites. It's one of mine too. And that hymn helps flush out the how of shared ministry. The how is as important as the what. It involves coming into an understanding of what your ministry will be together and how it will work within this community and beyond. Seeking the how of shared ministry requires openness, a grounding in love and listening and slowing down for inclusion's sake. Sometimes the need is so great we want to rush, but rushing excludes people, and that's not who you are about. how you act out your shared ministry will require respect and mercy, a willingness to forgive and laugh. It will require kindness and compassion. Congregations are an answer to the intense loneliness people are feeling, especially in the digital world, especially when circumstances beyond their control make life so uncertain. And congregations, when life is hard, it's where we come to. Congregations with a shared ministry can offer hope and healing and a sense of purpose. We're here today because we know that we need each other as social beings. Religion, actually, that word means to bind together. And we need each other, not just to have our biases and thoughts confirmed. Sometimes we need that. But we also come together because we have a deeper need to be made more aware of truths that we may have forgotten. A shared ministry reminds us that we are connected to something larger than our small individual lives. A shared ministry reminds us that life is both precious and precarious. And being a part of a congregation can help us meet each day with hope, find opportunities to do what we can in thanks for this one precious gift of life that we have. Now today, you are installing a minister that I think well. We have a history that's good, and I am blessed to call him a friend. So I can honestly say that today you are installing a minister that can act as a guide, as a caring, listening presence. He can model for you a way of being, a way of making mistakes, and a way of making repair. Ian is a minister who longs to share experiences with you, encourage you, and create a space for you. He is a minister who gives the ministry away to others because he knows, A, it's not all about him, and B, he understands that it is his job to offer opportunities and practices that will equip you to live into your best self. In our consumeristic mindset, and because ministers are often multi-talented and skilled, it's easy sometimes, especially if the minister is the only paid staff, to think, oh, the minister will take care of that, don't worry. He's got it. I beg you, remember, Ian became a minister, not necessarily an administrator or a bookkeeper, not an executive director, a fundraiser, or a groundskeeper. I'm sure he cares about all of that, and all of those jobs are important. But you need him to focus most of his time and energy on being your minister, to create space and practices that you may engage with so that you become more ministerial in your lives and that you spread the ministry out. Your participation and willingness to engage in this growth and service is how you do your part while he does his. This is shared ministry. In an earlier sermon called Crafting Together, Reverend Ian offered a piece of advice. He said to you to watch for repetitive stress injuries when practicing skills. This can happen if you knit too much, yeah? It doesn't work. The wrists speak back. This happens when crafting, like knitting, and it happens in shared ministry. Stress injuries can occur when a diverse group of people with a lot of passion and multiple ideas for how to do ministry in the larger community come together and decisions have to be made. A congregation can be a place of comfort and solace, and that is important to remember, as well as that those words mean different things to different people. So when different ideas and various needs compete, stress injuries can happen. And when they happen, pastoral care is needed. And because Ian can't be everywhere all at once, he can model and teach you how to offer care to one another. And this expanding sense of care that resides with the whole community, not just with him, allows the community to flourish. A ministry that is shared and intentionally cultivated means the false fights about authority and power are minimal. A ministry that is shared includes openly discussing the expectations of roles. You want to create a shared ministry that creates space for all to grow, for all to learn to live with more grace, more kindness, compassion, and joy. As the hymn reminds us, engaging in a shared ministry keeps the vision of ministry wide. In my own ministry, I confess that there were times that my own vision of ministry became too narrow because I got stuck in thinking that ministry was a solo job. It's easy to go there. A minister who feels a unique sense of responsibility to the congregation can start believing the lie that whatever's broken is theirs to fix. It ain't necessarily so. This kind of thinking is dangerous, and it limits the ministry. And this area needs you too much for you to have a limited vision. A clear vision communicated in love, moving at the speed of trust, is a vision that is created together. Saying yes to truth creates energy and a wider circle of influence. So what are you going to do in this shared ministry with Reverend Ian when there are competing truths? Because there will be. I'm sure there are. When your vision narrows to an individual truth rather than a communal truth, that's the signal to pause, to slow down. Engage in listening while staying focused on your mission. Maybe it means that the congregation needs to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable and not knowing just yet, staying in that unknown place for a bit. When you're uncomfortable with competing truths, pause and ask, what is that discomfort telling you? What does that mean? Perhaps it's a call for prioritizing the truth of being in relationship over the truth of being factually right. I'm guilty. Or maybe it's re-examining some of your priorities and your procedures and your policy for a community that's growing. In congregations, there are often hard choices to be made, and saying yes to truth requires courage and a large imagination. The last verse of that next hymn we're going to sing says this: just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment has pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. That can be a hard verse to sing, right? We're human beings. Sometimes we just don't love each other like maybe we wish we would, because relationships are messy. Folks, people in this congregation are going to disappoint you. Decisions made by the board are going to disappoint some of you. And that is what it means to be in a congregation. Learning how to live with disappointment is important if you're going to say yes to life and yes to shared ministry. Few of us are ever taught in our lives how to deal with disappointment well, and yet learn we must if we are going to act together for the greater good. How do you respond to disappointment? Maybe get mad if it doesn't go your way. Maybe you take disappointment as a personal hurt or insult. Maybe you close up and think, I'm out of here. I don't have to do this. What if your response to disappointment was curiosity, a wanting to learn more about a decision? What if, when disappointment happens, you lean in and with an open heart ask, can you tell me more about why you decided to do that? It's not easy, I know. And certainly curiosity is not my practice default, but it's something I'm trying more and more. And I think it's a necessary skill to acquire, to practice in shared ministry. We know that most long-lasting relationships have disappointment that happens, and we've learned enough to know that this is part of what it is to be in relationship. So when we sing that last verse, will you keep on loving even when you're disappointed, even in Him? The life's so short and the craft so long to learn. Chaucer knew this truth, and you heard Reverend Ian preach on it on that Hurricane Sunday. He encouraged you to be present and pay attention to your lives. And I add this, be present. Pay attention to the shared ministry you are crafting. Make the commitment today and let it be your vow. Learn the skills of how shared ministry can work for all. Despite the pandemic and all of the distractions that have people leaving churches, there is a future for congregations, but only a future for only those congregations who have clarity about what they're here to do and how they'll engage in doing it. A future exists only for those congregations who empower everyone to participate in the active ministry, engaging others with love and trust, speaking directly, being willing to have challenging conversations, and to offer encouragement. I deeply believe a future exists only for those congregations who are willing to do the messy work of community building and help grow people into their best selves, maybe their better selves. Shared ministry, crafted intentionally, with skill-building experiences, those are the congregations that will become and grow and flourish and be the oasis in the desert of our current day. In Ursula K. Le Guin's book on writing, titled Steering the Craft, a 21st Century Guide to Sailing the Sea of Story, she writes this, which I, of course, have adapted for you, and this subject of shared ministry. The experiences you'll have together in shared ministry can raise your consciousness, intensify your awareness, and offer you opportunities to try again and again, mess up and try again. Perfection is not the goal here. Yes, perfection is not the goal here. Staying in healthy community and embodying your mission is. So practice the skills of shared ministry often, so often that they become a habit that you don't even have to think about because it's just how you do your church together. Craft enables art, and shared ministry can become an art. And how we need congregations like you who are willing to lean into the craft and create art out of shared ministry. To make something well is to give yourself to it, to seek wholeness and follow spirit. To learn to make something well can take your whole life, and it's worth it. Blessed be, and amen. You're invited to rise in body or spirit and join in singing the hymn, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Just Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I breathe each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment is removed, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
Good afternoon. I am honored to be asked to be a part of this installation for you, Reverend Ian. Ours is a free church in which the act of installation celebrates a covenant freely made between members of the congregation and the minister whom we have chosen and who has chosen us. In the living tradition of Unitarian Universalism, the authority and privilege of calling ministers has always rested solely with the congregation. The relationship between minister and congregation is one of trust and mutual dedication to the principles of our faith.
Excuse me. On June 5th of this year, members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert voted to call you, Ian Whitfield Riddell, as our settled minister. That was so exciting. We have called you to be among us, to make our concerns your concerns, and to lead us by nurturing us to be spiritually courageous, wholehearted people. We would have you preach the word of truth in freedom and in love, minister alike to joy and sorrow, and set forth by your example, no less than by your words, the principles and values of our free faith.
We have already recognized and benefited from your calling to the ministry, and now on this day, November 12th, 2023, we formally install you, Reverend Riddell, as our settled minister. Reverend Riddell, are you ready and willing to undertake the sacred commitments of this ministry?
I am.
I invite the members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert to please rise in body or in spirit and say with me the words from the order of service or on the screen, so that together we may affirm our call to Ian and his acceptance of it. Members, we, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert, do hereby install you, Reverend Ian Whitfield Riddell, as the settled minister of our congregation. We call you to dwell among us, speaking the truth in freedom and love, ministering to us in our joys and sorrows, expressing the wonder and mystery of life, and encouraging each of us to fulfill our unique ministries. We would have you lead us as we weave this beloved community and as we knit ourselves into a deeper connection with everything holy and into a wider commitment to justice and compassion. We will support you as we support one another. We pledge ourselves to journey with you in unity of spirit, in the bond of peace, and in the ways of truth and love, sharing the ministry of this congregation with you, that together we might be a blessing to the world.
With great joy and a deep sense of humility and responsibility, I take up the ministry to which you, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert, have called me. I pledge myself to you, to the history of this congregation, to its present, and to its future. I promise to serve you and our Unitarian Universalist living tradition to the best of my abilities. Committed to right relations, I will cherish and cultivate the ways of reason, compassion, and service among you, crafting a community of love and justice with you. In so doing, I pledge myself once more to a work of compassion and co-creation, cooperation and companionship, in the name of all that is holy and in the service of all that lives. And I pledge myself anew to a love which has no limit, which requires me to do justice, to practice kindness, and to move humbly upon the earth. May what we weave together be a blessing to each other and to the world.
And I invite all of you who have not yet risen, colleagues, family, and friends, please rise in spirit or in body to bear witness to this act of installation. And then together, everyone, we do hereby affirm this installation and this ministry. May congregation and minister both be blessed, strength and wisdom in the years of hard and holy work ahead. Congratulations.
There's a little more before we party.
Earlier this year, I was part of 9 people from this congregation selected by the congregation to serve in the contract to settled ministry process. And I have to tell you, the 9 folks that I worked with were so easy. They did everything I told them. But seriously, we also had 4 other volunteers who helped us contact every member of the congregation to get their input. And so we have a gift here for Reverend Ian that I got to choose as the chair of the search committee. And as a UU tradition, it is a new stole for him to add to his repertoire. And it is, the artist who made it calls it Fire of Commitment. And it kind of fits the theme, don't you think? And when I saw it, I thought it was very appropriate for the next steps that we are to take as a congregation, and with you, Reverend Ian, as our settled minister, and where we're going to go together in the future. The chorus of this beloved hymn, which we will sing later, is, "When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of faith that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin." On behalf of this congregation and the Contract to Call Search Committee, we present the stole to you. Let's begin our future together. You have to help me there. Can I give you a card?
Now, since this is a shared ministry, it's my turn. It is no secret to anyone in this room that I am a knitter, that knitting holds a large part of my heart and my daily habits. I have spoken often from this pulpit about knitting and other crafts as metaphors for our ministry together. And today we are focused, as we make our ministerial relationship and commitments formal and explicit, we are focused on the idea that we intentionally craft this ministry together, that it is a shared ministry. And you have given me a gift. It is beautiful, and I am so grateful for it, and I will be proud to wear it as a symbol of this ministry that we share. And I have a gift for all of you. It is also a symbol of the ways we are committed to knitting our lives together. In a moment, the ushers, actually, could I have the ushers to come up now and grab the baskets that are under that cloth? Just any four of you would be delightful. Thank you. We tried to plan this. That's great. Thank you. The ushers will pass around baskets that contain a whole bunch of small knitted squares. When the basket passes, I invite you to take one, either the one that calls to you or the one that you choose, but please take one of these knitted squares. Thank you. Why am I giving you squares? I have knitted these squares for you over the past months, one a day since the vote happened in June. Holding you all in my heart as I use needles and yarn to make them. To me, they are symbols of the work we do when we create shared ministry together. They are symbols of the love that I share for and with you and our commitments to each other on this day. And I want to tell you a little bit about the yarn. Every knitter has more yarn than they know what to do with, if they're lucky. Sometimes, though, that yarn is too beautiful or it's loved too much to let it go. I have collected the yarn from years of my knitting efforts, symbolic for me of weaving in all of our previous experiences, achievements, and hopes, knitting all of them into a tangible piece of shared patchwork history. Much of this yarn comes from my own stash. But a lot of the yarn used to make these squares comes from another place. Every week since almost the beginning of the pandemic, I have been meeting with a group of other knitters on Zoom. These are my knitting family. They have become dear friends and a huge part of the support system for my life. We share stories with each other and support, suggestions and challenges, and we often share yarn with each other. And at least 10 of them sent me some of their yarn when I talked about making these squares. And so much of the yarn comes from them, knitted into our ministry as those people are knitted into my life. They are small things, I know, but I hope you'll find a home for the one you select, and I hope when you see it, it will remind you of the promises we have made to each other today, the commitments we have made to weave our hearts and intentions together in the shared ministry of this beloved community. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, I am so happy that this day has come for you and for you. So, Reverend Ian, thank you. He told me he was doing this, by the way. Thank you for this tangible expression of the craft of ministry, knitting. And friends, if you like, at this time, as we enter into a time of reflection and meditation and prayer, would you put down your orders of worship and just hold this? Hold this, yours, in your hand or your lap, gently. Touch the thread, the yarn. Feel the empty spaces that Reverend Ian has knitted into the rows. I understand this space allows a fabric to be forgiving, resilient, flexible. So there is a quality to love that is flexible, forgiving, and strong, that is beyond words. So let us sit and be quiet for just a few moments. Please join with me in the spirit of prayer as we begin with thanks for friends, for beloveds here, family on Zoom, for colleagues, the larger faith community, and especially for this day, as Reverend Ian W. Riddell and the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert formally begin this shared ministry. May love be the thread that is knit into the fabric of this community. We know that we are neither the beginning nor the end of this thread of love. These threads that are knitted deep within us as we are knitted into this evolving web of life, a part of all creation. And as we are given to this life, we are also given into death. And while we are here together, we hold the life of this community in our hands. And we pass it through our lives like thread. This world is awful and wonderful, sorrowful and joyful, and we are blessed and can bless. May we knit within ourselves, each other, this community, and the world a spirit of resilient love, one that is manifest in practical ways, making love's intangible connections as tangible as this piece of woven fabric, or a march, or bread, or a garden, or hello, or a hug goodbye. As Reverend Ian is more deeply knit into our lives and we his, may we co-create a living fabric of community that acts justly, loves kindness, and walks humbly on this earth. So that when the time comes when we must hand it on to those who follow, it will endure. May this day's service seal with covenantal intention and knit into our hearts and hands and minds our sincere commitment and promise to the faithful practice of shared ministry between the people of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert and the Reverend Ian. May this ritual bind us to that promise. May we keep faith with one another and our calling, sharing love, seeking justice, blessing everybody and everybody's full humanity without exception. And most particularly this day, may the blessings of such a ministry inspire, support, console, and companion the Reverend Ian W. Riddell and the people of the UU Church of the Desert for years to come. So may it be, and blessed be, and let the people say, Amen.
Reverend Ian, you and the UU Church of the Desert, you have said your big yes to each other today. Congratulations. You said a yes to a shared ministry in which you all will craft a community of justice, connection, and love. And in this moment, you and I and our beloved colleagues who have gathered here, so full of love for you. As I was thinking about us gathered, I thought each of us is a representation of these beautiful knitted squares that we received from you today. Today, as you and I are on this chancel, we pretty well represent Unitarian Universalist ministry. Go into any UU congregation and you'll see if they have a minister, someone who more or less looks like us, acts like us, talks like us, right? Some. Yeah, more or less. And as I was thinking about being here with you all today, I was reminded by your website, which is so full of great information, that you all were founded back in 1959. Am I getting that date right? Yeah, so you've been here 64 years. And I thought about the state of the world, and I thought about Unitarian Universalism 64 years ago. And I thought about who would have been expected to have been seen on a chancel or speaking from the pulpit. No, we would have represented two very unusual knitted squares back in the day. It was not until 1979 that the first openly gay ministers in our tradition were called to a congregation. And while there had been a history of ordained women ministers in Unitarianism and Universalism, at the time of the founding of your congregation, there was no woman serving any Unitarian church in 1959. And in Universalism, there were 3 Universalist congregations that had a woman minister in 1959. So I'm here today to offer you an affirmation, as you called it, an affirmation of fellowship. An affirmation of you being a beloved part of this knitted tapestry of Unitarian Universalist ministers. And this fellowship calls us as ministers to pay attention to 3 things, and one of those things is collegiality. And so when Reverend Ian put out the call that he was being installed today, we all said yes. We came, we drove. I don't know if anybody flew or bicycled, but we found ourselves here because we wanted to show up for you. Because you have shown up for us in so many ways. And while a lot of times the days, the in and out days of ministry are really awesome, and you just think, how lucky am I that I get to do this? There are also those days where you think, why did I ever say yes? What was I thinking? And that's when your colleagues can come in and help. We're here to listen. We've been there. And Kathleen spoke so beautifully to that in her sermon. We're also here to offer one another accountability. You are placing the greatest sacred trust in Reverend Ian. And Reverend Ian has a group of colleagues and a ministers' association that sets boundaries and guidelines and ethical expectations so that Reverend Ian can earn and keep and hold that sacred trust that you put into him. And then there's a third piece of fellowship. And this third piece is, will you hold up these beautiful knitted squares? I mean, look how clever you are and your friends. These are gorgeous. Look around the room. They're different colors. They're probably different textures, different patterns. Like, who else had a hard time choosing? They were all, right? I wanted more than one. But part of our being in fellowship together is that we know that even though our vision of ministry has expanded and Reverend Ian and I are in this chancel and pulpit today, part of what we are here to do is to continue expanding the vision of ministry. There are textures and patterns and colors of people ready to come into the ministry that we haven't even been able to imagine yet. And so part of your fellowship is ensuring that we keep those spaces and our knitted squares wide enough so that they too can find a home here and so their calling can be heard and affirmed. As I said, we show up for one another. As we were in line getting ready to come in, I looked at the gathered group of ministers and I saw my beloved colleague, Reverend Dr. Ken Brown, Everett, who served in intern ministry with me, so many other people who our lives have intertwined. And so often we would offer a hand or a handshake of fellowship. But at my ordination, the Reverend Ken Brown offered me a hug of fellowship. And with your permission, I would love to offer you a very respectful and very reverent hug of fellowship.
Thank you. Okay.
So I know your order of service is Tania Marquez, but I brought someone with me. You're not surprised because this charge to the minister actually includes quotes from Doctor Who, and I needed someone to be the voice of Doctor Who. So perhaps a bit of a stretch for your Mexican friend, but this is where Spirit guided me. So, yeah.
There's no point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes. Words of wisdom from the fourth Doctor.
Ian, be childish sometimes, but as much as you can, allow your senses to come alive with wonder and curiosity. Make space for play and exploration.
When did you last have the pleasure of smelling a flower, watching a sunset, eating a well-prepared meal?
Listen to what brings pleasure to you. In sound, in taste, in movement, this will nourish your spirit. And nourishment is what you will need. In the words of Parker Palmer, self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put on earth to offer others. Anytime we can listen to our true self and give the care it requires, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch. So nourish yourself and nourish the relationships that sustain you and give you joy. Make sure you have time to rest, rejuvenate, to listen to the small, still voice from within, to allow space and silence for wisdom to emerge.
Life depends on change and renewal.
Feed your mind, your interests. Allow yourself the gift of transformation when something no longer serves you. Befriend uncertainty. Embrace the wisdom of making mistakes. Be humble and kind. Be reminded that letting go is also a gift when life calls forth a new part of you or of your journey.
Every great decision creates ripples, like a huge boulder dropped in a lake. The ripples merge and rebound off the banks in unforeseeable ways.
No one understands your call to ministry better than you do. Be true to it, to what it asks of you, to speak truth, to act kindly, to live a life that embodies the values, the beliefs, the commitment you have towards this work and towards those who have called you to serve them. Your ministry will touch lives in unforeseeable ways. Trust the unfolding of your inner life and the unfolding of the inner lives of those you serve. Trust that the impact of your ministry may never be fully known to you, but that at times you will get glimpses of it. Welcome those glimpses with joy as an affirmation of your work.
I am and always will be the optimist, the hoper of far-flung hopes, and the dreamer of improbable dreams.
While you are the one who answered the call, remember that ministry is work that cannot be done alone, but work you will do with those who call you to serve them. Continue to embrace collaboration to foster the gifts others have to give. Together, you'll create a much stronger song, a beautiful symphony. Ian, never stop nourishing your spirit, your creativity, your imagination, your wisdom, and the relationships that will continue to weave this story with you. I also charge you with taking time to continue reading science fiction, playing the piano, and for moments of pure laughter. Ian, sacred is your call. Sacred is your work, and sacred is the gift of you have to give.
Thank you, Doctor.
I'm Reverend Sharon Wiley, the called and settled minister at our UU congregation in Escondido, where I have served for the past 11 years. In a previous era, 11 years was considered the average length of a settled ministry, but the times have changed. As Kathleen mentioned, they're still changing rapidly, and 11 years is now thought to be a considerable amount of time. So when Ian and I talked a bit about what my charge to the congregation might include, he might have imagined that I was going to talk some more about shared ministry, as has been the theme, and that would be a cohesive and beautiful conclusion to the service. And that's not at all what I'm called to tell you. He invited me to consider what advice I would give to a congregation at the start of a long ministry, which is what he and I think you hope to have together. So these are not words that he helped plan. These are the words that I'm called to share with that thought in mind. My charge to you is to show love to your minister as often as you can. Show love to your minister as often as you can. If that word love isn't right for you, think appreciation, think gratitude, whatever works for you. But there aren't words to fully describe how and why it can feel so difficult to be a minister sometimes. But I think part of it is that we ministers can be so very hard on ourselves. Any of us here in the room can tell you right now the things we think we're bad at. The speakers who just spoke can tell you the things they wish they'd said a little different, or maybe they shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. We can tell you the congregants we haven't had time to call or visit, the sermons we think fell short, the meetings when we weren't our best. The work of being a minister is learning to keep doing your job even as you feel certain that you are not doing it well enough. We need our congregants then to tell us what we're doing right. Ian needs you to tell him what he's doing right. Tell him when something he said or did made a positive difference in your life. Tell him the sermon that hit the spot. Share with him your gratitude for the role he plays in your life, for the role this congregation plays in your life. In my workspace at home, I've taken loving messages I've received from my congregants and I've printed them out and I've hung them on the wall in large print where I can read them easily when I sit working at my computer. These messages of love and gratitude have shored me up when I felt worn out, overwhelmed, and uncertain. So I charge each of you here, write something to your minister that he could hang on the wall to shore him up when he's feeling worn out, overwhelmed, and uncertain. Do it soon while you are thinking about it, and then keep doing it. Season after season, year after year, he will change and you will change as the congregation changes. You will change together. Keep showing your love, your appreciation, your gratitude. Show love to your minister as often as you can. And then the second part of my charge to you is to get out into the world to share the good news of progressive religious community, the good news of UU Church of the Desert. Because the world is hurting, friends, and people are lonely. Somehow, when we are more connected than ever before, people are lonelier than ever before. And they know they're lonely and they're searching for community, but they don't know anymore, not the way they used to know. They don't know anymore that church is one of the places they should be looking for. They don't know there's a church for atheists and agnostics and pagans, and those who don't know what they believe, if they believe, and those who maybe believe a little bit of this sometimes and a little bit of that some other times. Find a way to tell your friends and your family that this congregation is important to you and that being a part of this religious community is changing your life for the better. Invite a friend to come with you some Sunday morning. Make sure your neighbors know Christmas Eve services here are at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., Christmas Eve Sunday. Help make UU Church of the Desert visible in this community. I see on your church website and in your lobby, is that what you call that area? You're actively involved in service projects. It's okay to toot your own horn. Invite friends and family to donate socks too, to donate food for food baskets, to contribute money for the Thanksgiving food baskets. Share your excitement that your congregation is helping to ease the burdens of people who need some support. And if all that sounds terrifying and not easy and not what you want to do, that's okay. Do it anyway. UUs are not good at this. We know it. It's okay. I do it anyway. I don't mean trying to force or convince people who don't want anything to do with us to come here. I mean making sure that people have heard of us. That's all. Your friends and family should know that you are part of a religious community that is important to you and that they are welcome here if they happen to be seeking. So that's my charge to you. Show your love to your minister. Show your love for this congregation to the world. So mote it be.
This has been a beautiful event, celebration. And now we'll extinguish our chalice. Shirley will do it. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Will you please rise once more in body or in spirit as we sing our recessional hymn? The clergy are going to recess out. We're all going to stay for a little bit longer. The Fire of Commitment. Words are on the screen. From the light of days, remember, burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirit, with the faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we give with deep assurance of the faith that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living brings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment burns our hearts and soul ablaze, and our hunger finds fulfillment, needs to call us on our way. When we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. You can move your hips a little bit. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our heart finds fulfillment and our future can begin. Please be seated. Woo! Friends, I have too many thank yous to say, so I'm going to say them to all of you individually when the time comes. Thank you for everything that you did today, for this congregation and for us together. And I hope that you will join us for some fabulous food afterwards. There's lots of great food. We did a really big thing today, friends. Woo! We did a glorious, challenging, hope-filled thing. We held our past as individuals and as a congregation in our hearts, and we said yes to each other, and yes to truth and life and love. And there are big things in our future together, I know it. There is a lot of work to do. The world needs us. Our neighbors need us. And we need each other to be engaged in the work of justice and kindness. And those big things can be frightening to think about, overwhelming and daunting, but those big things are so often nurtured and made possible in the choices we make each day, in each and every moment. Lao Tzu wrote that the difficult tasks of the world must be handled through the simple tasks. The large tasks of the world must be handled through the small tasks. It is in our making of each small stitch that we craft the fabric of our lives, our relationships, and our world. Our large actions grounded in each small daily choice, each small moment in which we choose love over fear, connection over apathy, hope over despair, and kindness over scoring points. Love doesn't just sit there, wrote Ursula Le Guin, like a stone. It has to be made like bread, made all the time, made new. As we leave this place and time celebrating our newly voiced commitment and covenant with each other, let's carry the power of that in our hearts as we make the bread of our days together, as we knit the fabric of our lives together, and as we choose love again and again and again and again. Go in peace, my friends, to love and serve the world.